Yeah, let's talk about the book then. You touched on it. So this is
I
going to
won't
be
give the title away yet because
you're not sure on it.
No, we know it, but I prefer it to be a bit of a surprise for everyone. But that's launching spring 2022. Yeah. And it's it's the natural lifestyle philosophy. There you go. That's what's going in it. So really movement and play will feature in it. You know, what we've talked about, a bit breathing in there, perhaps being. Sleep's a big component for me, but again, not the sleep studies that are perhaps in the zoo human environment or the laboratory. It's more, again, how does that look? What does sleep look like in nature? And then using that as our example. Because, again, these amazing, incredible beings of the world aren't smashing 8 hours in one hit. Doesn't happen. So why are we trying to achieve that right now and getting stressed out about it? So sleep's a big player in there. Rest, but there's lots, again, like we talked about the story and at the beginning with Rich and, podcasts like that. There's a lot of storytelling in there and weaving stuff together and my path and my journey and, going from a kid born with club feet and then into endurance events, barefoot endurance events and running the length of the UK in my mid-40s that most people perceive as being middle-aged, right?
Well, not possible.
And so that it's not possible, right? How can anyone do that? It's like, well, it's possible, and it's possible in your 40s with married with 4 kids.
Yeah.
It's doable.
The born with club feet is the one, then.
Well, it is. Well, you saw the documentary, so we got the documentary as well, right?
We did.
So,
we watched that.
And people don't really get that when you say born with club feet. What does that mean? It's just, basically, I was the longest baby on record in Reading Hospital. Not much room in the womb for me, so I'd taken on some crazy adaptation.
Your record breaker coming out.
And I tuck my feet underneath my armpits. So then when I'm born, my feet are kind of tucked in, and if I was left, I'd be walking around almost on the outside, so a fully supinated foot. And I definitely wouldn't be covering the UK like that. So I went through a process of having plaster cast boots and then plaster cast into braces, and then over time, and for me, I guess that's been in the origins of the story, right? And the unraveling of what I now consider Tony 2.0, And I guess that's the life's work. Maybe it sits right back there. That's the start of it. Why does he want to be barefoot? Why does he want to walk around barefoot? And it wasn't actually until much later. It was prior to the Lands End John O'Groats event, because I'd parked the whole thing. Like, Catherine didn't even know about it.
You parked the Lands End?
No, I parked the whole thing around my being born with clubfoot and having these boots and braces. I was sitting in a ceremony and my intention in the ceremony was freedom. And the guy who's leading the ceremony, the shaman, looks at me as if to say, "Are you sure you want to go into this ceremony with freedom?" As a really? Yeah, because you never know what's going to come up, right? And I remember drinking the medicine and sitting there, freedom. And this first thing came up. It was around the thing about freedom, Tony, is that it's innate in all of us. We're all born with freedom. We are free. We're these free beings, but we're handed all this stuff. It could be the rattle, the toy, then it's the clothes, then it's this, and we just get handed all this materialistic stuff.
You think it's free at the time.
And every layer we're given, it's like, and more of our freedom's being taken. It's an incredible moment. I was like, it's like deep, man. And then, and the difference in a ceremony to just having a conversation is you are feeling that stuff. It's like really in there. And then the next part of the ceremony, I remember just it came around to attachment. So it was suddenly this understanding of attachment. Well, the thing about freedom, Tony, it can be gone in any moment. Boom. And then suddenly I was out of the ceremony. There was nothing. And it was like I realised then I shouldn't become attached to the medicine. Anyway, then there's a second night on the ceremony. And the second night, then I go back and I drink the medicine. It's so strong, man. The breath was just taking me deeper and deeper and deeper. And it was just boom, gone. And then just the incredible insights again. And I managed to shapeshift around the room. So suddenly it was like I had this magician kind of energy I was channeling. I sit where the guy, it was almost like I'd managed to teleport over here. I'm now the guy holding the ceremony. I'm the one who's singing, playing an instrument, and then holding everyone in my hands. And then I had everyone in my hands like this, Chris. And I had this massive headdress on, this huge headdress. And then suddenly turned into this warrior, and I was just sitting like solid in the room. And every now I come out of it, I was like, whoa, I'm like just this proper warrior kind of expression in the room. And then suddenly this freedom to be a warrior or whatever it was, suddenly these boots appear, and it was like, oh my God, I was born with these.
Wow.
Wow, that's underneath all of this. That's the layers. I need to let that stuff go in order to access that, perhaps warrior energy or whatever it is. And then I arrived home and I said, Catherine, I know what I have to do. She's like, what? What do you mean? Can you imagine? Been away for 2 days. I know what I have to do. You know. And I said, I'm going to run from Land's End to John O'Groats. He's like, what? Catherine doesn't know where Land's End is. John O'Groats is at that stage anyway. So well, basically the most southern point, the northern point of the mainland UK. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to just do it. I'll do it barefoot. I need to do it to lose the shoes. And then I told her the story about being born with club feet. But I'd managed to park that all those years. That's the fascination.
Why do you think you parked that?
Well, I think there's an element of trauma that's within it, and I think what I've experienced up until what I class as now that Tony 2.0 has basically been the deconstruct and dismantling of that trauma. It's only really in that ceremony where I just that's where it is. All this work I've been doing all over this time has been that.
Yeah, because you think by parking it, you know, it's not me anymore. I'm not associated with it. It doesn't really mean, don't feel too much. But there's so much to it that if we don't consciously bring it to the forefront, look at it, it's like me. I went to prison 3 times in a year, and to extent, I parked that. And I don't talk about it much, but it's such a big integral part of the journey that can be talked about and you know, inspiring others to you know, change their direction, the direction that I was going down in. But it is. I've certain times I've parked it, but it's.
Well, there's that shame and guilt and all kinds of things that get wrapped
sure.
up in that. I was in and out of trouble with the police a lot.
Yeah, I know you.
You know, just nuts behaviour when I was younger. But again, now I look at it, it's just again, it's almost like all a symptom of something. And what was that something? For me, it looks over here that it's the trauma of that first entry into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I guess people are doing their best, and it led me to be on 2 feet, and then eventually with those 2 feet carry me and create a huge platform and to raise awareness of some great organisations. It was all in that. So I needed the care, but it's everyone parked it, do you know what I mean? It wasn't just me that's parking that. There's my parents parking it, no one talking about it, no photos of it, no recognition of it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I discuss it, because before the Land's End, I said, where are those boots? What boots? The boots, you know, with the braces and you know, your father cleaned out the loft and he threw them away. I was like, okay, do we have any photos? No, we didn't really want any photos. Why don't we have any photos? Well, firstly, we were broke, we didn't have any money, so we couldn't really afford a camera. And, you know, if we did have a camera, why would we have taken photos of that? We wanted to basically put it behind us, and it was quite traumatizing. I was like, it's traumatizing. My mum was like, yeah, it's really traumatizing for me. She just said I was broken. I was broken every week. I had to go back and I was just breaking down because they'd have to crack open plaster cast and re-plaster cast your boots, and they would, you know, it's painful for you. And then you're put into boots, and they're prizing those open, doing them up. So that was traumatizing for her. So we know about energies, right, and intentions and language. Now, when you're in those first years, especially the first developmental years, you don't need words. You're in heart rhythms and emotions. So it's the emotions that are educating us just as much as the spoken word. You know, so if my mum's traumatized and experienced that, that's what I'm surrounded by. So of course I would have parked that stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, and of course there would have been trauma. Doesn't mean I had a traumatic birth, but it means it's the first stuff coming in. And if I then look at all my symptoms going through schooling, where I was like, you know, looking out the window, can't concentrate. Of course, school's the worst environment for me. You know, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, if you want to put a label on it. I just like to think it was the worst environment for me. I needed to be outside. I needed to be running around. I needed to be one of those kids that have just had their shoes taken off and could run around being barefoot and absorb everything from nature and just find freedom, get the shoes off, right? So I guess that's in there. So I can look at my whole education being terrible. The environment was terrible for learning for me. The teaching process was terrible for me. And again, you build it and build it and build it, and eventually it was cool to be in a particular tribe. And for me, that particular tribe meant joyriding cars and smoking weed and eventually doing trips and ecstasy and cocaine and whatever else we could get our hands on, because that was our new tribe, and it was a part of, it was almost like a rebellious form, and what we were rebelling against, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we getting away from? If you, and you can bring, you know, I don't need to talk about this. You can just research Gabor Mate, because Gabor Mate's work's fascinating for this, and you can see that even the addiction that comes in, like alcohol addiction, drug, everything is just, again, there's a trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's accessible things to give you a feeling that you're not feeling elsewhere, and that's connection, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and then what's been the best thing for me is I don't, you know, this, you know, we've touched on it with, I think, what was it, Rat Park study, it was about connection, was it, where they, you know, they have rats in a laboratory experience.
Yeah, it was essentially the reason why heroin was made just boom illegal.
Yeah.
Because the rats died eventually. They had laced with heroin, one was laced with water.
Yeah, so they had opiates and they have water, and then they show, you know, but what happens if we create a rat park? So we put the same rats through the experience in the laboratory. They have a water feeder and drugs, and they keep going to the drugs, and it's, of course, they're suffering in the environment, in the habitat of which they're in. And then we create a rat park over here where the rats can do literally anything they want. They can run around, you know, hug, have sex, you know, party all night. Well, I don't know, whatever they want to do, right? But again, they get their needs met, right? So they can move, they can run around, they can.
Yeah, they're fulfilled.
It's not just about their rat connection, like the connection. It's the connection to, I feel, having more and more of those needs met, those fundamental needs met, you know. And I think through getting more and more of my fundamental needs met has given me the opportunity to unravel and deconstruct and dismantle that stuff over there, you know, personally.
Tony 2.0.
Tony 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go. So yeah, it's a journey, and you know what? For me, I put myself out there and said that this, you know, it's happened to me. I've had it all. You know, it's not. You know, I've had businesses have gone bankrupt. Right, I've been on the brink of just being completely broken, suicidal. Just, and you know what? It happens, but you can change in a moment, in a breath. Things can change. You know. 46 now, so I've seen a fair amount of pain cave and then emerging into the light again. Oh, back in the cave and come out into the light again. So I've been there, you know. I can understand it, and also help others. I feel is to see that you don't have to exist in a permanent state of making do and survival. You know, we all have it within us to be simply awe-inspiring or to thrive as a being. Yeah, but you're not going to recognize that unless you look at, again, I feel reconnecting to the part within you that says, I have natural needs here. You know?
Yeah, that's what's been normalized, isn't it? The suffering part, the monotonous part, the kind of the desperate, depressive sometimes.
Well, look, I don't know where we're at now, but just everyone, whenever you're listening to this, just do a quick hashtag search of wellness or well-being and look at the millions that are looking for that.
Yeah.
But there's something severely at there, isn't there? Out of whack here, because we
get addicted to it.
Because we're in search of it, but it's basically become a huge industry. And actually, for me, my lifestyle approach is to strip things away, not add more in. It's a very simple approach.
Yeah, that's what I see. When I come and spend time with you, I do see you just being more. And it's so simple. When I was coming to the podcast, I was like, what am I gonna ask you? Because when I'm with you and I spent nearly a day now, in which I'm just like, it's just simple. I'm like,
well, like we were getting in the ice bath, and it's a barrel earlier, right, wasn't it? Yeah. And Dean had come over, this other guy.
Yeah.
And Chris said, how many litres are in there? How many litres? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's like, you know.
I know, yeah.
Again, it's putting more into something that it doesn't matter. We just fill the thing up, right?
Exactly.
Just put the ice in and get in it. What temperature is it? It's cold, you know. But I get it. People need to know. But for me, it's like, I could just tune into the being of getting in the water and becoming the water.
But why do you need to know how cold the water is if You're not changing it in this moment, and it is what it is. You're having the experience. Why would you ever need to know?
Well, because we love personal bests, but for me, I think the PB is the present best. And I've learnt that through the endurance
Yeah.
events. Getting properly broken on those events, and it's like, it's is what it is now. One step, one breath, whatever it is at a time. That's your present best. Really refining it right back to the step and the breath being the present best.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Not, oh, this is how fast I've ran half marathons or marathons before. Oh my God, it took me 12 hours to run 2 marathons today. It's like, and because you lose sight then, and it's like, well, actually, it's just the present best. It's whatever what I can be doing in this particular moment in time.
So the documentary,
But
there's
But I just want to add to that, because I was having a conversation with someone on a call in the Nat Life Tribe. So this is like the online community I have, and along with that, I think it's great to, who was it, Matthew McConaughey, in an interview, I think actually with Rich Roll,
Oh yeah.
discussing about his journaling, and get down in the journal those amazing moments where things are great, that sense of being when you had it really, I'm on my game, because there are moments when you're not so much on your game and you're really down. Yes, it's your present best that you're there, and recognise where you are, and sometimes there's some great wisdom imparted in those really deep, dark moments. There's some great lessons in adversity, but you don't want to remain within the victim of that. It's like, understand that that's a moment, and then perhaps that's what I loved about that journaling model, is that you then looked at, these are the things I was doing when I was at my best,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when I was at my real present best.
Yes, at your present best, in that moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's a scene that won't make it into the documentary for music rights reasons, but it taps into what we're talking about, and that's
Yeah, we should discuss that.
get it out there, because it's such a powerful moment. So at the end of the eventually it was 9 days.
Well, I think that was on, because that would have been, I would have finished the event. So the event was, those that don't know, it was the Three Peaks, and the Three Peaks is normally a 24-hour challenge. You run the highest peaks, what is Wales, England, and Scotland, Snowdon, Scarfield Pike, and Ben Nevis, the Big Ben. And then you drive between them, and you do that event within 24 hours. And I decided, right, firstly, I just looked at it, and someone said, why don't, for the next event after Land's End, John O'Groats, why don't you just climb the Three Peaks barefoot? And I was like, because it just feels like it's, I don't know, it just feels like it's been done. More to it than that. Why don't I just run the whole thing? Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's just do that. How long do you think it take? Probably 10 days. Let's maybe just look at 10 days. And then Yehudi, who's a great guy that I coach. Well, we mentor each other, I guess, and he's also a member in that Nat Life Tribe. And he loved this idea about the 3 and 9, and thinking about transformation and growth and these great numbers of 9 and 3. Why don't you try and do it in 9 days? Oh, it's a lot to do in 9 days. Yeah, let's do it in 9 days. And then someone said, I think it's been done before. Go and have a look if there's a record. And then we looked at the record, and the record was, of course, 9 days. What was it? 11 hours and 44 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, there is a record. Yeah, let's do a record. And then, of course, it meant that in terms of PR, because I wanted to, again, raise awareness for Indigenous people through Survival International, and to do that, you need the press as well, so the platform. So we had a great amount of press on Land's End, John O'Groats, and with this, it's like, well, we have a record. So there's this guy born with club feet. He's going to now run the Three Peaks barefoot. And I thought, well, I've learnt my lesson from running on that amount of tarmac on that linear surface for nearly 900 miles. Let's bring Vivo Barefoot into this equation, so I can then wear something that would just protect me from the tarmac and that linear experience the whole time, just wearing the pads away. But then the more natural environment being the mountains, let's do them barefoot. So that was the intention going into it. And so we're then, I'm then chasing a record. And we have a film crew there, Chris and James from We Move, they're filming it, and they're like with us the whole time, and everyone's geared up. And I break my toe on the first day on Snowdon, all the way up until, what was it, I think day 8. And it must have been the day before, because I wanted to finish it early. we could have finished it a day before. I finished it in 9 days, 7 hours, and 18 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got the record, but the day before, I could have finished it a day early, and we wound up at this campsite, and I just did this big trail run on the way back, and it meant like one more day of running, and then going up Ben Nevis. And I said, "Oh, do you know what? I think let's just go up the day. Let's go up the day after. Let's go up the next morning rather than getting it all done tomorrow and get it out of the way tomorrow. Let's do it an extra day, and I can take Katerina and the kids up with me." And they're like, "What? What about the record?"
Chris is like, well, yeah, I think we probably need to be getting up there soon.
There's a record here. And I said, "Oh, fuck the record." I said, "It'd be much better just to make the memories with the kids and Katerina. Imagine that. I go up on the final day with them and make those kind of memories." So yeah, that unfortunately didn't make it in the documentary. But what we then had is, after then extending it and going up the next morning, what would have been the final day, the weather switch. So we had
it wasn't meant to be. It was
50-mile-per-hour winds and -4.
Yeah.
So there was no way I could have taken Katerina and the kids up on that. It would have been too dangerous, really.
So it was how it was meant to be. And
so it worked out as meant to be. It still got the record, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.